Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey everybody, it's Jessa. Welcome back to the Better Sex Podcast. I'm here again, batch recording some episodes actually today and having a great time. And I've got to tell you that this topic that we're going to talk about today, I'm somewhat embarrassed to not have come up with myself, actually. Sherrie reached out to me about the topic of pelvic organ prolapse. And it took me no time at all to agree to interview her because this just wasn't on my radar, but it should be. Too many people are experiencing this condition and know nothing about it. And as you're going to hear in the interview, it's not really in med school training. Gynecologists are not taught about this. People that are doing, pelvic exams and pap smears and stuff are generally not taught about this. It's a relatively common occurrence, and people are in the dark with it. Her book, actually, it's The Silent Epidemic. So anyway, while this topic isn't going to apply to everybody, I'm going to really encourage you to listen to it. Because even if this is not at play in your life right now, it may be at some point in the future. Unless you're a gay man with only male partners, if you're involved with women, people with vaginas, anyway, at all, this could happen. And I think having the information in your head and being aware of it, if you come across this later, you're much more apt to recognize it and to be able to get appropriate help and diagnoses and appropriate treatment. So even though it may seem totally irrelevant to you today, I'm going to ask you to stick around and take in the information. So Sherrie Palm is my guest. She is the founder of the Association of Pelvic Organ Prolapse Support, APOPs.org. And she has written tons of articles, done lots of interviews, done lots of videos, and has amassed this huge assortment of resources to help you. And she's just a wealth of information. I'm so grateful she's here, and I hope you find it interesting and potentially helpful if this is going on in your life. So Sherrie, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I am so thrilled to be here to share information with your following. I'm pumped, truly pumped.
Yeah, and it was so interesting because you reached out to me about this topic, and I jumped on it because I was like, wow, yeah, this is really important. It hadn't really occurred to me to cover it before, so I'm so glad that you contacted me.
It's one of those topics that kind of hovers behind the closet door, and so unless it's brought to the surface, it often goes unrecognized. So yeah. So let's start out with, what is pelvic organ prolapse? What is it? How common is it? What causes it? What kind of risks? How are people at risk for this too? Okay, just the basics. Okay, so for starters, what pelvic organ prolapse is a condition where we have, women have got, actually all people have got, but in this case we'll talk about just women, have muscles that's at the base of their pelvic cavity called the pelvic floor or PC muscles. And for those that are familiar with Kegel exercises, this is the muscle group that's tied to those exercises. And what those muscles do is they sit below those organs in that pelvic cavity and they are the support structure for those organs above it. So what happens for a variety of reasons is that muscle pocket gets damaged or weakened for a variety of reasons, and we'll get into that in a second, and can no longer support those organs above it appropriately. And they start to drop down into the vaginal canal, and they can actually literally push outside of a woman's body. So there's 5 types of pelvic organ prolapse, and I'll just call it P.O.P, short acronym. It can be your bladder. It can be your rectum, the colon. It can be your uterus. The top of the vagina can cave in on itself. That's called vaginal bulk prolapse, and it actually comes down all the way out as well. What am I missing here? Enterocele, your intestines. It can be any one of those 5 types. It can be
several of them at the same time, which is actually very common. And there are 4 degrees of severity, 1 through 4, 4 being the most intense.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to use a cheat sheet here to give you to run through just a quick run through of the causes, and we can get into them in more depth if you want to.
Okay.
The most common cause of P.O.P. is childbirth. And that's not rocket science because of all the damage that can occur to all those structures down there when you're having a baby.
Yeah, it's a lot of trauma. Right?
Number 1, menopause is right behind it. And what is about menopause that causes issues is that drop in estrogen, because estrogen is actually a huge component of muscle tissue strength and integrity, not just in the vaginal area, your whole body. So when women go into menopause, they may recognize that they're weaker than when they were younger, but they don't realize that it's because those estrogen impacts to their muscle tissues, whether it's their legs or their arms or wherever, pelvic floor. That drop in estrogen means your muscles aren't working as well as they used to when you were younger. It can be caused by heavy lifting. And we can be talking occupationally. Your job is related to heavy lifting somehow. If you're a farmer, you're lifting heavy bales of feed or bags of feed for your animals. But it can also be related to what do women do all day, every day when they have children? They pick them up.
Yes.
all the time, over and over. If you've got 3 or 4 kids, it's magnified. So that's a big issue. Hard foot strike fitness activities is a big causal factor. And
what do you
looking at like a marathon running, jogging, anything that you do when your foot is
pounding the pavement kind of thing.
Down. If you took a balloon and you filled it with water, held it by the stem, and you go like this, you will see which organs are doing inside your pelvic cavity when you hit that pavement. And we have a huge sector of women that come into us that are runners. Runners love to run. I get it. But they don't recognize or understand what damage they're doing themselves by doing so. We encourage speed walking, not running. And there's other fitness activities. It's the same thing. I used to be able to really enjoy watching gymnastics, Olympic gymnastics. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like this. Every time those women, they tumble and their feet hit that ground, I'm just
so the listeners know, because I can see you on the screen, but when if you're holding a balloon, we have to describe what you did. If you're holding a full balloon by the stem, you're right, and then you're letting it bounce up and down in your hand. If you're imagining the pressure on that, right?
It's like boing, boing, boing. Yeah, it's going up and down. Chronic constipation. Constipation is a very common issue with women, and it is not only a cause of P.O.P., it is a symptom of P.O.P. So it kind of hits on 2 different sides.
Wow.
Coughing every time with constipation, when you push down to have a bowel movement, you're pushing everything down, not just the poop. If you have chronic coughing, every time you cough, if you have emphysema or you have allergies or bronchitis, when you're doing chronic coughing, it's like jerk, 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 jerk. Repetitive jerking down of organs and tissues. Diastasis rectus abdominis is where that long abdominal muscle stretches apart when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
For some women, it comes back together, and some women it does not. And it leaves that gap, that stretchy gap there. That's a weakness in that structural integrity of the pelvic cavity. Genetics is a factor. If your mom had P.O.P. and your sister had P.O.P., guess what? You got an extra tag on your blackboard. And hysterectomy is a causal factor, and it's for a couple of reasons. The uterus is kind of like a hub of a wagon wheel. The other organs in our cavities sit around it, and when you remove that hub, those organs are all like squishy bricks. If you had a wall of bricks, squishy bricks, and you took the one out of the center, they're going to kind of fold inward. But also when women have hysterectomies, and this still happens frequently, I forget what the stat is, but it's in the high 47-48% of women who have hysterectomies, they're supposed to secure the top of the vagina.
Yeah, I did wonder about that. Wow, if you remove the uterus, how in the world is the vagina?
Tie it up. You got to tie that vagina up, and it doesn't happen. In almost half of women, that does not happen. So what happens is then that vagina caves in on itself, and that's the vaginal wall prolapse.
Wait, half of the time? This is not
the last stat I read was it was either 47 or 48%.
What are the doctors thinking?
This could be a whole topic all by itself, and that's the truly unfortunate lack of appropriate curriculum given to gynecologists when they're going to school.
Yeah.
They don't really touch on P.O.P. much at all, and they're missing this huge, important sector.
Wow.
And there's also neuromuscular diseases, like I have MS, that's a precursor for me. Women that have got any kind of tissue integrity type condition like Ehlers-Danlos is double jointed. Women that are double jointed also have stretchy skin usually. Stretchy outside, it's stretchy inside. And so support tissues that hold those organs up don't do their jobs effectively. So there's many different causes, and women typically have more than one cause. There's usually one big one that is the big push.
Yeah.
But in my own body, I had 7. So it's no shock that I ended up with P.O.P. at all.
Right. So 7 of those various causal factors. Like, wow, yeah, that's a deck.
You just go down and you just tick them off and tick it, and it's like, whoa, this is not good. So, and on the symptom side, we'll run through those real quick too. The most common symptom that really gets women's attention is that bulge that they feel. Not only they don't always see it, but they'll feel a bulge or they'll feel a pressure. Some describe it as like sitting on a ball coming out of the vagina. And that was the case for me. How I discovered this, because I was very, very proactive, self-help type stuff, and it was MS related. And I was in my mid-50s when I was diagnosed, and I probably had symptoms. I mean, the big symptom, I had symptoms back before I had my hysterectomy at 40, but the big symptom that got my attention was I would wipe after I urinated, and I would feel something down there. It's not like 3 months. And I finally, one day I was just like, what is that down there? I got the handheld mirror out, took a look to see, and saw that bulge. And for me, I was grade 3, so it was like the size of a walnut. So you see what looks like a tumor coming out of your vagina.
Wow.
I'd never heard of vaginal tumors before, so I wasn't really freaked out about it, but I knew it was not good, whatever it was, and had to be checked out.
Yeah.
So that's what generated the shift for me. And so for most women, that is the most significant symptom. And again, they may not see it, they may just feel it. And it's a very pronounced vaginal pressure.
But I'm imagining by the time something protrudes from your vagina, this has been going on for a while. Like, is that a later stage phenomenon? Like
well, women notice that
prolapse would have started earlier inside, and eventually it.
Right. And see, I was grade 3. I was in a progressive state. I had 3 of the 5 types of P.O.P. But I actually had symptoms back before I had my hysterectomy at the age of 40. So let me run through all the symptoms, and we'll circle back to that at that point. So just now I'll run through them more quickly. I won't go into details on all of them, but I'll just run through them more quickly. So urinary incontinence, we all know about that. It's one of those things that women just think that's what happens when you have babies. That's what happens when you get older, and they blow it off. It's a symptom of a condition that needs to be addressed. You can also have urine retention where you can't get the pee to come out. That's in more advanced stages of P.O.P. That chronic constipation I mentioned on the causal side, yes, is also a symptom. And we're not talking the once in a while constipation. We're talking like all the time, everyday constipation.
Okay.
Fecal incontinence can occur. Pain with intercourse, which is a huge, huge deal in our pocket, our sector. Lack of sexual sensation. You don't feel anything down there anymore.
Wow.
Rectal, vaginal, back, or pelvic pain, rectal or vaginal pressure, which are distinctly different.
Yes.
And your tampons can push out. And you don't know why, they just won't stay in. That was the symptom that I had before I had my hysterectomy. Wow. I had my only child, my only vaginal birth, my only child, blood child, at the age of 35. And about the age of 37, I couldn't keep a tampon in anymore, and I didn't understand what that was all about. But I had a hysterectomy at 40, done. Didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. So then you fast forward to my mid-50s when I was diagnosed with P.O.P., and that was because I noticed that bulge when I was wiping, and I didn't have really a lot of symptoms of P.O.P. A lot of women have got horrible, horrible pain or pressure, or the pain with intimacy is really pronounced for them. I didn't have any of that.
Okay.
So I didn't notice it as early as a lot of women do. We have got women in our space that are in their mid-teens through end of life.
Wow.
And when and how they recognize something's wrong is extremely variable.
Yeah.
So everyone's situation is unique. It's a very diverse condition. It's very unique.
Okay.
Are most women apt to find this themselves? Or, I mean, I'm thinking, wait, when you go for your annual exam and Pap smear, doesn't the gynecologist see this? Like, where is it discovered mostly?
This is this is another burn beneath my saddle. It also goes back to the lack of appropriate curriculum provided to the not just gynecologists, anyone who does a pelvic exam.
Yeah.
Whether it's in nursing or whatever field that they're in. Anyone that's involved with women's pelvic health should have this basic curriculum, and it's very poorly provided. I pulled out 7 volumes from Marquette Medical Library years ago just to see what they had in them in different fields that did pelvic exams. And of those 7 books, there were several books that had nothing, and there were a couple books that had between 2 paragraphs and 2 pages, and there was one book that had 8 pages. This is a very diverse condition. Very diverse condition, and so there was no curriculum that's provided.
Mostly we're going to go in, we're going to get a Pap smear, an exam, or whatever, and the practitioner is not going to recognize that there's prolapse.
Very often they don't recognize. Now, some gynecologists do recognize it, but by and large, it is not routinely screened for. And if a woman does not bring up the condition or the symptoms, and the gynecologist, if she may bring up the symptoms, and the gynecologist recommends tests that are totally they're not at all going to diagnose pelvic organ prolapse. There's actually an exam that you can do for this. It's called a P.O.P, and they actually can measure markers in the vagina. But the urogynecologists, the specialists that treat this condition, use that tool, not the gynecologists. So what happens when women lay down on that exam table, your organs will slide back. You may be standing up, and they're all bunched up and hanging down. Lay back. Yeah, and they fold back into the normal position. So a gynecologist may not recognize it.
Okay.
And if he's not or she's not appropriately trained, they won't palpate for it.
Yeah, and they're not screening for it.
If it doesn't say anything, they don't ask the right questions.
Yeah.
It just slides right on by. We tell women in our space because we hear all too often that women go into their gynecologists and they complain about these symptoms and asked to be screened for pelvic organ prolapse, and the gynecologist will screen them laying down and will say, it's not that bad. Go home, do your Kegels, come back and see me in a year. We'll check it then. We tell those women you demand to be screened standing up. Demand it. And many of them do that now. And that's just, it's not a speculum exam, then that's just a palpation, because they can literally feel tissues bulging out of the vagina. And then the gynecologist will go, oh, they didn't realize it was that bad. So this is becoming a push for patient empowerment.
Yeah.
You have to ask for what you're not getting. And until it's going to take some time to adjust things on the curriculum side. So as much as we can push forward with the patient side of it, asking for what they need is going to be very beneficial.
Right. At least that's the second best. So do women, can you examine yourself in terms of, and get some, I mean, I guess it's one thing if people are listening and thinking, wow, I've got a bunch of these symptoms, I've got a bunch of those risk factors, I got to go see maybe the urogynecologist. But how do you do a self-exam? Is that a possibility?
That is so easy. At the end of the day, go in your bathroom, lock the bathroom door to keep the kids out, the husband out, the dog out, et cetera. Don't take your phone with you. Go by yourself and go solo. And take a handheld mirror. And I say at the end of the day, end of your work day.
Okay.
So if you work third shift, it would be, the end of that third shift pocket. End of your work day, you take that handheld mirror and standing up, hold it between your legs and look to see if there's tissues bulging out of your vagina.
Okay.
If you have any degree of tissue bulge, you have some degree of prolapse.
Okay.
You only see a tiny little bit. Again, it has 4 grades of severity. Grade 4 is your uterus is completely outside your body. Obviously, you would notice that.
Right.
But if you're only in grade 2, and grade 2 is very variable. It can be just a little bit bulging out, or it can be, like I said, mine was a walnut size.
Okay.
That was grade 3. Mine was walnut size lump coming out. So it's going to be very variable. Any tissue bulge at all is a flag. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. All right. So what can be done about this? I mean, what are the treatment? I mean, is it treatable? What's the expectation in terms of, specifically sexual function?
Yeah, there's on the treatment side and the whole sexual function thing, that's a whole big pocket we need to dig into deeply. But on the treatment side, there are both non-surgical and surgical treatments. And step 1 is getting a definitive diagnosis. you go see your gynecologist and you tell them, some women actually literally take a selfie of their tissue bulge and show their gynecologist because they are poo-pooed so often and they're blown off and told them that it's all in your head, you're imagining the symptoms. Or they've done tests for their chronic constipation or whatever else, and it comes back with negatives. So we tell them to see your gynecologist first. That's your baseline for diagnosis. Demand to be screened standing up if they're not seeing what they need to see. And that gynecologist will do one of two things. They will either refer you to a women's health physical therapist who are amazing at non-surgical treatments. They have not tons, but a lot of different treatments that they can provide and teach you. And you can also be referred to a urogynecologist, which is that surgical specialist who can advise you on both non-surgical and surgical options for this.
Okay.
So sometimes gynecologists will actually fit you for a pessary. I wish I would have brought a pessary with me. I didn't think to do that. And a pessary is kind of like a diaphragm-looking type device. There's about 20 different kinds of them. There's different shapes and sizes because we're all as different on the inside as we are on the outside, shape-wise. And that is kind of like a support device that you insert into the vagina, and you get up to a point where there's bony markers up there that hold it in place, and that will hold the tissue bulge up inside of you. And if you get certain ones you can take home, you can remove them yourself every day, take them out at night, clean them, reinsert them in the morning. Some women wear them for like a week straight before they take them out and clean them and put them back in. Some have to be inserted by a doctor, a urogynecologist. And then you go in to see them every once a month to once every 3 months to have them removed, cleaned, and reinserted by the physician. And so the treatments surgically, there's a lot of different kinds of surgical treatments options for this condition, depending on which type of P.O.P you have, type. And I'm sure every one of your listeners has probably seen the commercials on TV for the transvaginal mesh complications.
Well, yeah, that was another question. Wasn't that around prolapse? And now there's a major class action lawsuit.
Yes, there is. So let me just dispel a few misconceptions about that. Yes, this is a condition behind that class action lawsuit, and it is the biggest class action lawsuit that has occurred, to my knowledge, in the States. Here's what happened with that. And full disclosure, I have had transvaginal mesh. I'm 11 years past. I'm a success story. It's a very valuable tool in the right hands for the right patient. It's like don't throw pools out with the baby out with the bathwater kind of a situation. So what happened? They recognize when you don't use mesh to treat this, surgery fails in typically anywhere from 1 to 5 years. 1/3 of women will have a repeat surgery for prolapse.
Now, is the surgery like tacking these organs into place?
Yes,
basically?
exactly.
That's what I'm imagining. Okay,
and yes, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And what they would use is what they used to use is women's own tissues, and stitches, and so on to tack them up. But they didn't hold long term in too many women, so they started utilizing the mesh because it was used for hernias for so many years in the abdominal space and worked really, really well for that. And then what happened is the mesh manufacturers, when them started chasing down the gynaes and bringing them in, and they would do these training sessions for using mesh. And gynecologists should never have been doing mesh surgeries. They should never, ever have been doing mesh. A urogynecologist has an extra 3 years of schooling on women's pelvic cavity above and beyond what a gynecologist gets. They're truly specialists, and their knowledge of all those structural tissues in that pelvic space is much more evolved than a gynecologist. So those complications that started occurring were, by and large, the result of physicians doing surgeries they should not have been doing to begin with. And by the time the FDA acted on this, there were a lot of women that had complications, and that turned into this big class action lawsuit. I spoke at the FDA twice, once in 2011 and also in February of this year about mesh, about the value of mesh and the importance of restricting clinicians who shouldn't be doing these procedures from doing them, and encouraging them to keep an open mindset about the value of this, because I know too many women that have had repeat surgeries. And when you talk to women that have gone through this, they've had not just 1, but 2 or 3. I've known women that have had as many as 8 surgeries, and those are the ones that are in the EDS sector that have that stretchy tissue in the double joints.
Yeah.
They have a really hard road to go with that pocket. But the bottom line is there's huge value in this tool if it's used in the right patients. So
Okay.
a lot of women have fear and anxiety about mesh, and we've got a whole page on our website that's all about mesh, and it's got both pro and con, and there's research, a lot of research posted on that page, as well as articles that have been written just about the information in general to kind of calm the fear. And it's so important that women truly educate themselves about mesh if they're considering going down that road.
Yeah.
So there's surgical and non-surgical treatments for this, and we encourage women to, when they're first diagnosed, to educate yourself about prolapse. That's hugely important.
Yeah.
And then utilize, not only while you're educating yourself, but for a while beyond that, you utilize those non-surgical treatments and become familiar with your body, recognize signs and symptoms, and start doing your Kegels, because you're probably not doing them. Most women don't. They've heard of them and they're like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it later on. And if you don't use it, you lose it. It's kind of like you go to the dentist, you have a cavity fixed, you stop brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
Who would do that?
Right.
It's the same thing with this. You gotta how to do the quality care stuff. So once you've done that for a while, you may have tried 1 or 2 or 3 different types of treatments, and you're done. You're just done. You want to get fixed, and then you go see your gynecologist, and then you schedule surgery, and you go from there. So, and there's no right or wrong with any path. It's what's best for you as an individual.
Right.
Hi, it's Jessa here, taking just a quick break. Thanks for listening so far. I wanted to let you know about the sex quiz that I've put together called How Healthy Is Your Sex Life? I've taken a close look at the typical ways that I see couples get into trouble with sex, including avoidance, neglect, negativity, distraction, and boredom. And the free quiz will score your individual results based on these factors. And then I provide my recommendations and ideas, including my top 10 sex tips, which will help you make instant improvement. If you'd like to take the quiz and see how healthy your sex life is, you can do it right now at sexhealthquiz.com.
So what can people expect in terms of sexual functioning after, experiencing prolapse, through the treatments of prolapse? And I'm sure there's a variety here, but what are sort of the general expectations that people can have about what this is going to mean for their sex life?
This is a huge, huge barrier to intimacy for women. We talk about this in our space all the time.
Yeah.
And again, because we have such a variety of ages, demographics-wise, it's what impacts each demographic is unique. Women, first and foremost, are so stigmatized by that vaginal tissue bulge. They feel icky. They feel ugly. They don't feel feminine at all. They're afraid if their partner's going to see that bulge, he's going to be creeped out. He's not going to be interested in sex at all with them. And so often they'll not disclose to the man that they have this condition or this bulge of tissue. And they just, keep their fingers crossed and they get lucky he doesn't notice it, And sensation-wise, men won't notice the bulge, other than it may enhance sex for them because that bulge makes a tighter fit.
Yeah, there's something extra to sort of rub against.
Exactly, yeah. If they're inside, it's a tighter fit. If they're outside, it's something else, to rub against. So for women, it's very devastating, and how men react to it is extremely variable. So they may share it with their partner, and they may get a very negative response from that partner, or he may be very supportive. It could be, complete planes apart. So that's a huge deal. Pain with intimacy is very, very common with prolapse. And again, because there's 5 types, 4 degrees of severity, every woman's experience with pain is going to be a bit unique. So some women have just horrible pain, and the impact of this to relationships is devastating.
Yeah, I see that in my practice all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
For different reasons, but yeah.
Right, yeah. You're trying to explain to your partner that you have pain, and the first time it happens, he's going to be, oh, that's okay, we won't worry about it, we'll wait till later. And then the second time it happens, he's a little disgruntled, but he's like, okay, and the third time it happens, that's a game breaker, a game changer. And now we're on that higher plateau of relationship issues. So For women that don't understand that the reason they have pain with intimacy is because they have prolapse, this is very difficult for them.
Yeah.
For those that have been diagnosed and have the pain, they can try and talk their way through it, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's just a huge sector of issues there. Women that have got a lack of intimate sensation, okay, if you're not feeling anything down there,
yeah,
you might just go out in the kitchen and wash the dishes. There's no pleasure for you. For some women, it's more about the cuddling, but a lot of women really enjoy the sexual sensation, and who doesn't want an orgasm? Seriously, straight up, that's like everybody wants to have an orgasm. So women that don't feel that intimate sensation, that kind of has a real strong ripple effect too in their intimate relationship with their partner. And you can explain that to your partner, and they're not going to understand, that you don't feel anything. Women that have got coital incontinence. This could be urinary incontinence during the act of intimacy. This can be fecal incontinence during the act of intimacy. Talk about a mood breaker.
Yeah.
This is a huge mood breaker.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when it's just a little bit of urinary incontinence, a woman might not even notice that she's having that occur.
Right.
But it may get to the point where it is pronounced enough that not only is she noticing it, but her partner's noticing it too. And now again, it creates those ripple effects into the relationship itself. She's embarrassed. She doesn't want to have sex because she's worried about it occurring.
Yeah.
If you have fecal incontinence, wow, that's a huge mood breaker. And women are so stigmatized. And some women are very fortunate that their partners are understanding and you're done, you clean up and you laugh about it and you move on.
Yeah.
Get a glass of wine out and just chill, and then it may be a one-time thing. It may be a more than one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's again very variable from woman to woman, but it's no matter what, that is a huge ripple effect to the relationship. Women may have gas with P.O.P, and we all have gas at some point in time, but the P.O.P makes it worse because of how those organs are all displaced.
Yeah.
And it puts pressure on the colon, and things just don't move the way they're supposed to move. The chronic constipation, if you're constipated, you feel like a big ball of sludge. You just feel like a big ball of sludge. And so that by itself is a mood breaker. But then when a man's inside of you and moving around, that doesn't necessarily feel very good either. And it may not be pain. It may just be a pressure sensation that you're feeling, but it's an uncomfortable pressure sensation. And women can have both vaginal and rectal pressure just in general with prolapse. And so if you're creative enough and you're trying enough different positions, you'll probably find one that works well for you. But usually women are so stigmatized by just the whole ball of wax that they don't think about trying those different positions.
Right.
And realistically, most men are totally open to trying different positions. They're, bring it, but women just don't think about it when they're in the moment. So any of these things can cause huge intimacy.
I'm listening to you talk, and first of all, I'm aware that not everybody is in a heterosexual relationship or is going to have penetrative sex.
Yes.
So some of these issues may not be as problematic if you're not having something inserted. Right. But it's still sounding like it could still really get in the way with any other kind of sexual play, right? Like if you're not having sensation, or if you're feeling self-conscious, or there's a bulge, or there's pressure. Right. It's not just about penetrative sex, right? With having impacts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the women that, and we don't have a lot of women that are female partners in our space. And I have actually reached out to them because I don't think I know they have prolapse too, because it's not a one thing that causes it. There's many causes.
Right.
And I haven't had any luck breaking down that barrier yet. And I would love to hear from them. I would love to have them come into our fold. The bottom line is a woman who is stigmatized by that bulge sensation or that bulge look, I don't care who her partner is, can have the same ramifications for you emotionally.
Right.
So the stigma that comes with this is devastating, and it doesn't matter what path you decide to go down,
So how much better does some of this get after treatment?
Considerably better. And it doesn't matter whether it doesn't matter, but whether you have the big initial shift to improvement is educating yourself. The fear of the unknown is massive. Yeah. And when it's a condition that is so stigmatized, it's like tenfold. So if you just educate yourself really well about this condition and understand the symptoms and understand the sensations, and you recognize things that are happening, and you understand what you can do to improve your own dynamic. And as an example, when you have coital incontinence, if you do things to address that, if you recognize that, well, I probably should not eat anything, drink anything except maybe a half glass of wine before we're intimate, and then you experiment with different positions until you find the one that's the most user-friendly for you, then you can move forward.
Right.
So that self-education, the self-awareness is a big piece of the pie here. But beyond that, when you start to go through, once you're familiar with the condition, you understand the condition, and you start to try and think outside the box more with the different treatments that the non-surgical treatments that you try. Because there are many of them, you will find the ones that work best for you, and everything doesn't work for everyone. Again, 5 types, different. Your needs are unique. So you have to play around with the different treatments and find what works best for you, and that will enable you to improve your intimate life. And if you incorporate, if you make it into even like a gameplay with your partner, that partner is engaged in the process too now, and obviously wants you to get better, so it's better for both of you. Yeah. And so just make that part of your gameplay. Just at least think about it. And open conversation with your partner is huge. It's so important, and you'll know pretty fast out of the chute if that partner is open to discussing it or open to trying different things that will help you help yourself. Once you move on to surgery, it absolutely improves because you have eliminated that bulge. You have eliminated a lot of your symptoms.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say that women that go through, I'm 11 years past surgery now, and the body continues to age. I don't care what you have fixed. You can do a facelift inside or a facelift outside.
That's true for all of us. Yeah.
I'm looking for that 55-gallon drum of miracle liquid I can dip my whole body in to get the face, the neck, the boobs, and the butt, and the insides all at the same time fixed. It would be awesome. But we know that doesn't exist. So surgery absolutely makes you feel better, and the empowerment that comes after you've had surgery, that you feel you have control of your body again, is just, it's very, very uplifting, very uplifting. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. And again, every woman's path is going to be a little bit different. Some women try many different non-surgical treatments.
Right.
And never find any of those that really make them happy. For me, I jumped into surgery quickly because I was just like, just fix it. Yeah. I don't want to deal with this stuff. I have one more thing to do. I don't want to do that. Just fix it. But women, because the needs are so different, they may go through 5 different kinds of non-surgicals and not be happy with any of them. And they're so down because they think there's no fix for me.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be normal again. And that's the operative word there, normal.
Right.
And then they finally decide to have surgery, and now they're uplifted. Now they're like, okay, that sensation is gone, and they feel pretty again, and they feel empowered again, and they can move forward after that point. So there's no one and done with this. It's extremely variable, and I encourage all women to search their own path thoroughly and don't give up hope, and talk to other women about this and see what they have to share about what they've done on their own.
Right. Okay. So would you say just a little bit about where people can find you and what kind of resources might be available that you've got?
I got the bottle there.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, they can Google APOPs, APOPS. That will get you to our website. It's pelvicorganprolapsesupport.org is our website. And when you come into the website, there's a couple of different things you can look at first. I mean, you can look through the whole. It's a very dense website. There's a lot of information there. The P.O.P info is a drop-down menu with individual pages with different aspects of prolapse information. Sherrie Palm articles page has got, I've written like 65 articles now about different aspects. This impact women is physical, emotional, social, sexual, fitness, employment, quality of life impact. It impacts our entire lives. So you'll find articles about all of those layers in that article section. If you go to the P.O.P TV video page, you'll find videos I've done. There's quite a few videos I've done about, I think it's like 60-some videos too at this point.
Wow.
There's, at the top of the home page, there's a link to request entry to our closed Facebook support forum.
Okay.
And this is our goal. This is our goal. And we have got women from 177 countries in our closed Facebook support space. So what this is, you request entry. We screen all requests. The only men that are in there are your gynecologists who are trying to get information from women to understand the condition better.
Right.
And otherwise, it's women only. And again, mid-teens through end of life. And so women come in there. We screen aggressively. And then once you're in, some women come in and they just read.
Right.
Some women come in and they tire kick a little bit, and then they will post their story or their question. And this is not APOPs helping women. This is women helping women.
Right.
The best of the best.
Yeah.
And so they share their information. If a woman comes in and asks, I'm thinking about getting a pessary, can you give me some advice? And they all come out of the woodwork and they share their information and what they did and how it helped them.
Yeah.
With the impact to intimacy, that's a topic that comes up every day in our school. And it doesn't matter what country you come from, what nationality you are, what your sexual preferences are, any of that stuff, your age. There's always others in there that are in the same pocket that you're in. And you'll find someone who will talk with you and share information with you. There's a treatment that I didn't mention earlier that I'll throw on the table. I'm in the process right now writing an article about it called colpoclysis. And this is where they literally sew the vagina shut. Mm-hmm. Now, women will find that shocking. But the bottom line is some women that are in their more mature years, this is a tool that's used when they know they're not going to be sexually active with intercourse anymore. They will consider this procedure because it's a mesh-free, extremely high success rate, very easy recovery period type of surgery to go through. And so, again, it just magnifies how variable women's needs are with this condition, that they'll everywhere from just doing their Kegels and nothing else to having the vagina sewed shut and everything in between.
I got to tell you, as a sex therapist, I'm not going to ever judge anybody's choices, but the idea of giving up on sex that just breaks my heart. Because I have older clients that at 60 might have thought they were done having sex, and then they get a new partner 5-10 years later, and it's like, oh, actually, I want to be sexual. So I just have to acknowledge I'm having this pause. Like, oh my God.
Let's step back here for a second, because
that sounds drastic. But
when we talk about colpoclysis, we don't think of it as being non-engaging in sex.
Well, right, but it shuts out the door to penetrative sex.
It does shut the door.
Right. You're right. I don't think of sex as just penetrative, but still, it's the idea of closing off.
It is that, and that's the very end of the spectrum there. And women that I know that have had it, and one, I went through about a 3-month pocket with 2 different women. This was years ago, who were considering having that procedure done, and they found me, and it was like they had to have this dialogue to have permission to go through with it, and to get them to their comfort zone. And one of them was a very sexual personality, very, very sexually vibrant woman. She was in her 70s. She had been a hairdresser her whole entire life, on her feet, and it was very pronounced prolapse. And her husband was in on the counseling sessions with her, and he had really bad diabetes, and he couldn't engage in penetrative sex anymore either. But she said, it doesn't mean we're not active. And so they went through these counseling sessions themselves, and they got to that comfort zone, and then they went ahead, and she just blossomed after she had this, because she felt good. Yeah. She felt good. And so defining sexuality is so diverse, It's all over the page. So that is the more radical end of the spectrum, but it is an option.
Yes. So. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for getting in touch with me, for sharing all this just, really important information.
Well, again, it's me thanking you, because this gives us a whole additional pocket of women that we can reach, and not just women, men as well, that we can reach with this information. And it's just pivotal that we get it out there to everyone, because this condition has been on medical record for nearly 4,000 years, and it's still stuffed in the closet. Yeah. That has to change. Yeah. We're looking at the next significant shift, next significant evolution in women's pelvic health awareness, screening, practice, and policy. It's a whisper away. So, and you're helping that happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.